Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome from wherever you are joining today. My name is Susan, and I am joined by Dexibit founder Angie Judge. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, Susan. Hi, everyone.
Today, we are going to be talking all about working with a semantic layer. But to begin with, I'm going to take you through a quick introduction to Dexibit for anyone that may be new here. Then we'll go get into working with a semantic layer. So if you're new to Dexibit, we do data analytics specifically for visitor attractions. This is for both cultural and commercial organizations. Our mission is to democratize data, and we do that by bringing together all sorts of data from around the visitor's experience and your venue's operations. So things like footfall, ticketing, CRM, point of sale, e-commerce, social web, weather, and so much more. I will share my screen now to show you what that looks like in the product. So here is Dexibit. It is software as a service, so you can invite as many users as you'd like, and you can build dashboards, reports, insights, forecasts, which you can then turn into scheduled email reports at a click of a button. In Dexibit, we have a huge library of visualizations. To add one to your dashboard, you can simply search for the topic you are looking for and click Add to add it in. And this is an example dashboard, so you can see lots of different data coming together in these visualizations to get everything from very high-level data right down through to the very detailed data. So I'll hand it over to Angie now, and perhaps Angie, you can start us off by telling us how does it all work, getting data into Dexibit, and where does the semantic layer come in?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Susan. When you're working with data in a visitor attractions are by nature really complex business models. They have lots of different lines of business. You think about when you go to an attraction, you might need to buy a ticket either to get into the venue, to participate in an activity like an exhibition, an event, a experience. You might eat in a cafe, you might buy a souvenir in the shop, you might go to a school program or education program, you might hire the place out to have a wedding or a party. All of these sorts of things, they're all different lines of businesses, and they all usually come with different systems as well. And when we sort of think about completing out the visitor's experience and our understanding of the venue operation, we might then have other data coming in as well, like, for example, Google Analytics or reviews that are left online by the visitor, or even things like the weather. So lots of different data from lots of different systems. And as a result, there is various vendors that need to be integrated into. And we're also talking about data that crosses lots of different domains. And that's part of the challenges that visitor attractions have, is that the data that you use for, say, ticketing is quite specialized and unique to ticketing, as is the data that you use for, say, food and beverage, containing things like packs, for example, which you might not see on the ticketing side. So again, quite unique to that domain as well. And so that's where a Dexibit comes in that you can turn up with just your systems. You don't need to have your own data warehouse or data lake, although it's fine if you do, but you can turn up with just those raw systems that you have, like your ticketing systems, your point of sale systems, and so forth, and plug those into Dexibit. And out the other ends, bits, visualization library you mentioned, dashboards, forecasting, insights, etc. And the way that Dexibit works is between your integrations and that end result for the data consumer, so being able to look at insights or forecasts or whatever it may be, is what we call this semantic layer. And so a semantic layer in the data world is something that like abstracts and simplifies and standardizes data. And particularly for us in the visitor attraction, that's really important because of all of these different domains and all of these different vendors. That's a lot of complexity otherwise to have to work out and learn as an organization, as knowledge. But it's also something that you want to be up with the latest in the industry best practice and subscribe to. And so working with Dexibit and having access to that semantic layer gives you that automatic unlock, which makes it a lot faster time to get to insight, a lot more cost efficient in terms of your total cost of ownership for data, and importantly, that best in class experience of how to work with data in a visitor attraction amongst all of that complexity. So that's how the semantic layer works. So starting to come into the pieces of that, there's really two halves. I'll share my screen here. There's really two halves to that semantic layer in Dexibit. And the first part starts with the integration pack into the vendor. So here we are in the data platform space behind the scenes. And this is where we integrate in with all of the different vendors, capturing the credentials that allow us to connect into these systems. And once those systems are connected, we'll come here into the Data Explorer. You can see all of these different data sets from the different vendors that you're integrated to start to appear in the Data Explorer. And we can, those of us who are involved in the technical side of managing data at the visitor attraction, so this might be your system administrator or your technology department, or Dexibit doing this on your behalf, can come in here to manage, administrate, have full transparency and control over those integration packs. But the big benefit is that you can see here where we've integrated in with a vendor, like in this case, Bellwether, which is a footfall counter or camera that's used to track visitors physically coming into a venue or into a space. You can see one of the benefits that the Dexibit integration pack offers is that everything's already here. We don't need to sort of work out how to integrate with this vendor, what is contained within it, right down to every single attribute that's coming out of this vendor has been properly labeled with what we deem it to be the right words to describe each attribute or field in the system, to be explained in simple but meaningful language. Often there might be some notes contained within this to build upon that knowledge. For example, if there's something important to know about a field, like its default time zone, for example, and any sort of automations, transformations that need to happen to that data. In this case, you can see there's quite a few of these pink tags added onto data here, like, is this an entrance? What's the official recognized count? Is the sensor active? These are some of the things that we find, scaling factors, notes about the sensors, etc., useful to add on top of Bellwether, in this case, Bellwether's data. So all of this value comes layered into that integration out of the box. So that becomes part of sort of the turnkey nature of Dexibit. And you can see here that each one of those fields is highlighted that it's part of that integration pack. You can still customize this to meet your needs. So if you watch this here, let's go and customize this description, my own description here, and I can save that. And you can see this is different now. And if I go in and edit, you can see that it's been managed by an integration pack, but it has been customized. And so I'll change that back so that it's not. But it just allows you to have all of that out of the box value, but you've still got that both transparency and control over managing the attribute going forward. And so coming back into the data experience that we were looking at before, where this gives us the benefit is, for example, whenever we're looking at a system, all of these attributes are properly named and described. There is access to the data dictionary in the product for data users. And we've got a library of pre-built visualizations as well. So for example, if we come in here and look for Bellwether, we can see all of these visualizations specifically about Bellwether that are in this library, just because by nature of the fact that we've integrated into that vendor. So it gives us, again, that turnkey, out of the box, semantic layer value that's coming from each vendor that we integrate to. So that's the first part of the puzzle of the semantic layer is that integration pack. And we integrate with over 100 different industry vendors. So you can imagine just the product value that comes in from that. The second part of that, if we come back into this data explorer here, we were up in data sets before where we were looking at bellwether. We're going to come down into domains. So I mentioned before that visitor attractions are complex business models, and we've got all of those different lines of business and all of these different domains of data, like footfall counters or cameras versus something like food and beverage, two entirely different data sets. So we like to sort of summarize and aggregate up some of that data into these domains. And so we can map the vendors that we have into these domains. Now, sometimes this might be a one-to-one mapping. So for example, bellwether, footfall cameras into count, so the domain of footfall counts or traffic counts, for example, where we're counting people traffic through. Or it could be a domain like revenue, where we're actually taking in probably multiple lines of business, probably multiple vendors. So for example, if we think about revenue, we might take that data in from like our ticketing system, our point of sale system. Maybe we've got a separate one for e-commerce. Maybe there's a separate one for food and beverage. Maybe we get revenue in from our membership as well. So immediately we've crossed 5 different systems, 5 different vendors, and we're mapping all of those together, usually in the form of a derived data set, to bring them into a single domain for revenue. And again, so let's go ahead and do one of these mappings. So we're in the Data Explorer here in Dexibit. We're in domains here, and we're going to start with the domain of count, so footfall or traffic counts. And we're going to map these, this domain to bellwether, this integration pack that we picked up earlier. And so you can see here, these are the fields, the attributes that are most common to when we're working with count data like footfall cameras. And we're going to go ahead and click to define the mapping of this domain. So we're going to take this sort of industry standard domain of count, and we're going to map it to the vendor of bellwether. So the first thing we'll do here is pick our data set. So we're going to pick bellwether. And then what we do is for each one of these attributes that the domain is expecting, we're going to come in and map it to the attribute. So you can see this is a really, really straightforward process, particularly because we've already done that work of defining or redefining bellwether's attributes of what they're called and how they're described. So they actually look quite similar usually to what we're expecting to map across. So we've completed this mapping now, and we'll click in to save this. And again, the value that this delivers is when we come back into the dashboard experience. Let's just load up a little dashboard here. So we saw that in the library when we connected the integration pack, we then saw all of these visualizations coming in for bellwether. We're going to achieve the same thing now for count. So again, on top of all of the bellwether visualizations, we've now got a whole pile of count visualizations. So you can imagine this if we go back to our example of revenue, we might connect in something like a light speed for retail, or a toast for food and beverage, or a gateway for ticketing. And then we also connect those domains through a derived data set into a revenue domain. And then we, on top of all of the visualizations we've got for each one of those vendors, we also have these beautiful revenue visualizations, which are looking at like where revenue is coming from by different lines of business and so forth. So our per cap revenue, for example, split across those different lines and so forth. So it gives us again that sort of unlock value, that that semantic layer. So there's 2 halves to that semantic layer. The first being the integration pack, and the second being that domain mapping. And the value that it's giving us is that best practice of defining the attributes, the domains, the descriptions, the visualizations, everything that's coming out of the box. So that best practice for the visitor sector. And it's also giving us a really, really fast, as you can see, turnkey experience around getting time to insights, so getting value from our data, and that lower total cost of ownership for maintenance. Because of course, us at Dexibit, when we're maintaining these integration packs with vendors or making changes to the best practice, we're pushing that out across, productized across all of our customers, while giving everyone the opportunity to not only have transparency over that, but control over what they customize and configure for themselves. So that is a really, really quick introduction to what a semantic layer is, why it's important. It is that through abstracting and simplifying and standardizing data, it does sort of turn what can be some quite complex attributes coming out of these source system vendors into something that's really user-friendly, something that's really business-oriented, and something that sort of translates data concepts from some quite technical fields and complex joins, which means that your users don't need to know how to use SQL or everything to be able to interact with data in the front end. And it provides this nice, beautiful wrapper of consistency and gives you that sort of governance control over things that have been recognized and audited and properly configured. And another big advantage too is that it makes everything super fast. So it enhances the performance of your data. And so, Susan, that is all I planned on covering today. Are there any sort of questions that we need to cover off, or anything to add in there?
We've got a question here. What if I want something different to the out-of-the-box visualizations, or I've got specific requirements that I need a visualization for?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. Let me actually just share my screen again. Just out of interest, you would have seen these global visualizations here coming in from our integration packs or our domain configurations that are offering us a sort of industry best practices, standard visualizations. So we can just hit a plus button and throw a visualization into our dashboard. Or you can actually configure up your own and then save it to the library. So to do that, wherever you've got a visualization, we have either maybe started with one of ours and configured it. So in the toolbox here, you're clicking on the top right to edit, and you're using the toolbox to configure. Or maybe you're even starting ... at the top right, create dashboard item, and starting to build a visualization completely from scratch. Whichever one of those routes you've taken, you can come in here and click ... top right of the visualization and click Save to Library. And you'll see in the library, there's a list of account visualizations as well as Dexibit's global visualizations. And in these visualizations, you can save in whatever you like. So you can completely customize your visualizations and bring multiple data sets together, change the back of the card description, change the axes and labels, so add in any of those sort of filters, configurations, etc., that you like to get your visualizations exactly how you want them. And then they'll appear in your library, and you'll be able to share those with your colleagues so that you can all quickly add them to your dashboards and reports. And it will come up here to say who the author of those visualizations are. So you have the best of both worlds. You've got our best practice ones, and then you've got your own ones as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Angie. And thank you for everyone who's joined today. We look forward to seeing you next time.